Kia ora, welcome to episode 67 of the SWNZ Podcast, the podcast for New Zealand Star Wars fans. My name is Matt.
And my name is Christy.
Another interesting week for news from a galaxy far, far away, so let's jump in and talk Star Wars. First thing that's really jumped out at us is the fact that the HasLab Razor Crests, the 4-inch scale giant vehicles from the Mandalorian, are starting to show up in New Zealand. Very exciting. People that ordered them via Mighty Ape or perhaps direct imports from overseas are receiving them in hand, have been doing so for a few days over this last week. I understand that EB Games haven't shipped any yet, that they may be taking place later in June, but if you ordered yours from Mighty Ape, you haven't received it yet, it's probably only a day or two away, maybe delayed over the long weekend. If you got one of these in hand, we're super excited to hear what you think of it. Let us know in the comments below. We'll also be taking a good detailed look at the one that we personally received over on our personal blog, Villa Varakino. We have a YouTube channel where we will be doing a unboxing of that, and we hope to get that video out tomorrow. We'll put a link to that down below as well. We'll be looking at that in detail. Our personal blog, Villa Varakino, is where we discuss our personal approach to Star Wars hobbies and living the Star Wars life, as distinct from SWNZ, where we're taking a look at news that is relevant to Kiwi Star Wars fans.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I know that the Razor Crest was a bit of a wait. Obviously,
well, it was first announced in late September, early October 2020. Yeah. The initial ship date was supposed to be October 2021, 1 year after that, and here we are in April of 2022.
It's been an anxious wait for New Zealand fans, as fans and collectors in the US would have already received theirs predominantly. Obviously, there's kind of an extra step of shipping, getting things to New Zealand. Originally, Mighty Ape had a little bit later in the month as the sort of anticipated shipping date, so it was kind of excited to get it in hand a little bit earlier. For customers in Auckland, most of you would have been able to get yours from Mighty Ape before the long weekends hit. Hopefully, any of you sort of further afield won't have to wait too long to get your deliveries in hand. But in any case, slightly earlier than initially given as an estimation date from Mighty Ape. I know that they were aware that fans were anxious about the ETA for these. They sent out an update email, so very excited that people have them in hand, getting them in hand, because it's been a long wait and it's going to be a sort of a crown jewel in a 4-inch collection.
Yeah, I think this is a big deal because the first HasLab project, the Katana Jabba's sail barge, wasn't available direct to New Zealanders, and the third HasLab project, the Black Series Rancor, didn't hit targets, so it didn't eventuate. That looked like it was going to be available as an exclusive through EB Games, but that's not going to be the case. So it was really quite cool that this was available through multiple New Zealand retailers directly, and I know some people did bring it in overseas. When you did the math, they all ended up being a very similar price. The main choice between them was whether or not you had to pay up front or progressively over time.
Yeah, I think I speak for a few fans locally. From a local perspective, I do prefer to buy from a local distributor. It kind of cuts out a lot of the hassle with freight forwarding, paying tax, especially on these higher ticket items, knowing what the blanket end dollar price was going to be, placing that order from Mighty Ape, knowing that it's, Mighty Ape lets you sort of pay things off progressively, so you don't have to pay all in one hit. There's no surprises when it comes to tax or freight. Anybody that collects from American websites will be aware that the shipping rates, due to interruptions and just a host of other issues, have gone up a lot over the last couple of years. So something this big, it was nice knowing that how long it would take. The shipping's not going to suddenly go way up on you and give you a bit of a headache when that bill comes at the end. This was a very known thing, and if you're a Primate member with Mighty Ape, it was shipped for free, so it kind of, you knew exactly how much it was going to cost. It was nice and known, and no sort of nasty surprises to take the edge off what is supposed to be a really exciting time, getting one of these special items in hand.
Okay, the other really significant news, or one of the other very significant news items, is that the Obi-Wan Kenobi screening date, premiere date on Disney Plus has been shifted. A YouTube video was released a little over a week ago now. It actually featured Ewan McGregor making the announcement, perhaps to soften the blow. The original date was going to be May the 25th, which was Wednesday New Zealand time, and that coincided with the 45th anniversary of the first time Obi-Wan Kenobi appeared in made a live action appearance. It's now been bumped by a couple of days to Friday, May the 27th, so only a couple of days. They are going to release 2 episodes at the same time, which is a little bit of an interesting move as well, because this is a short series, only 6 episodes long. But this is all probably because Star Wars Celebration will be taking place in California between May the 26th and the 29th. So this would probably be tying into an event at Star Wars Celebration, which I think is a bit of an interesting move. Not my favourite approach, to be honest, because only a very small subset, as cool as Celebration is, and we've been to many over a great number of years, since about 2005, as cool as an event as it is, it's only a very small subset of fans that are lucky enough to go each time, so it does have an impact on the rest of us who won't be going.
Especially with the way that the size and scale of these celebrations has gone, it becomes very hotly contested to try to get into any panels. In the past, you were queuing up for what felt like a day and a half to get into some of these things. Outside, no bathroom breaks. Then once you got inside for the overnight capacity, you're sleeping on concrete floors. To be honest, I have done this a few times, and it's a rough experience. Especially rough as if you spend all night queuing and you miss the cutoff because people snuck in ahead of you and cut the line, as it were. The last celebration in Chicago, 2019, they brought in a bit of a raffle system. You put the email address in that you used to purchase your ticket, and it was basically a lottery. Some of you got tickets in and most of you didn't. Some people appreciated this because it put a level of fairness. There was no cheating, and you had to show your allocated email address, QR code to gain admittance. You didn't need to queue overnight. You were guaranteed a spot. If you got there early, you could get a spot closer to the front of the stage, as opposed to at the back if you really wanted to. But it did mean that it was out of your hands for a lot of people. And I know some people were very, very bitter that they did not get a lottery ticket to the main panels or some of just any panels. So it'll be interesting to see how they will do a Kenobi screening / celebration. If Ewan McGregor himself turns up, people are going to feel very, very bitter if they do not get to sort of participate in that big event, which seems to be a driving force behind the reason for the change. I have heard some rumors on the internet that feel that this date change is Disney Plus wanting to go directly head to head with the final episode of Stranger Things, which will also premiere on the 27th. That might be a huge component to this, that they want to see how well one of their biggest Disney Plus titles can compete with the sort of juggernaut that is Stranger Things. I think that'll be really interesting. As news outlets often note, Disney Plus does not give out the same sort of statistics that Netflix does. They don't often show, how many households, the viewership numbers in the first day, the first week and stuff like that. So there won't really be a way to know who comes out the winner here. So I really hope this was in some ways, I do hope that this was more than just wanting to do a panel for a couple of thousand people at Celebration, because the celebration halls at the Anaheim Convention Center don't hold the capacity of a stadium. At Celebration Chicago, there were thousands and thousands of people that could get into the main stage panels because it was held in what felt like a basketball stadium.
Anaheim has the overflow rooms, doesn't it? So,
yes,
but that's
not
just
the
watching
same.
A digital feed. It's not even a live.
The ballroom
presence
that was used in Anaheim in 2017 fit. It was rumored somewhere between sort of 3,000 and 6,000 people. I got to go in that room. It did not feel very big. You looked around and felt like there was not really that many people around you. So if they're going to do something like that with Ewan and people watching the episodes on the screen, the timing is also interesting as well, because while us here in New Zealand, Disney Plus generally releases at midnight in the States and relates to about 9 o'clock for us here.
I hope this doesn't screw things up for us locally. We've been quite fortunate that either 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. has been the time that Disney Plus episodes drop for us. And like you say, that corresponds to midnight on one of the coasts and about 3 a.m. on the other coast in the US. But if they bump that to waking hours, then that will really distort when we get it locally. So just as a side note, this is just a one-off for the initial episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Subsequent to that, they'll be being released at the standard time on Wednesdays each week.
It's really interesting that they don't really want to divulge the reason for this. I know everyone was excited about the fact that it was premiering on the premiere date, and then they just changed it.
It'll become clear down the line, but we don't know yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it'll be cool for the few people that get to be in a panel with whoever may or may not turn up. I'm sure that will be very cool. It's kind of notable that Ewan McGregor, despite his sort of prominence and his apparent love of Star Wars, has never really participated much in celebrations. He doesn't appear for screenings or photos. He has appeared a few times in sort of a pre-recorded video format along the lines of back at, I think it was 2005, along with Natalie Portman. We had Samuel L. Jackson, Liam Neeson. They did recorded messages because it was in the era of the prequels, and while it was a shame they couldn't come, at least there was a video sort of message to the fans that was played during some of the large panels. So it'll be interesting to see in what capacity they might finally get Ewan, considering that I'm sure there would have been something in his contract about a sort of a press tour, things like that.
It would surprise me if he doesn't show up. I mean, he is the lead of this show, and I think that it'll be intentionally pre-organized in a way that he can be involved in the marketing, because he was involved live during the initial announcement when Kathleen Kennedy
made the
statements along the lines of, have you gotten sick of being asked if you're going to ever play Obi-Wan Kenobi again, or however it went down. That was quite funny.
But yeah. So obviously this news doesn't have too much sort of relevance for New Zealand fans, but it does affect, we don't know
the release date does.
The time. Yeah. We don't know the time that this shift is going to mean for us. We don't know whether, it would be weird if Disney screened it in a room for people hours before everyone else. It theoretically could happen, but then everyone will be running off to the internet live tweeting what happened in those episodes, because there's always somebody that's going to be a jerk about it, that wants to go and, oh my gosh, this and this.
It makes a small number of people feel very privileged and happy about it, but this is a whole lot of the rest of the fan base. Not my favourite approach.
I think the fan base, personally, I really do, get a sense of sort of community and fun watching each live action series the day and the minute that the episode drops. It kind of feels like you're sort of joining in with people all around, because live TV isn't as, a high priority these days. We watch predominantly a lot of streaming content on demand. And so you kind of get this live, like, I know it's not as momentous as like the moon landing or something, but it kind of feels like that, knowing that you're watching the same episode as other people around and watching, Luke Skywalker, pull out his lightsaber and take down Dark Troopers at the same time as everyone else is watching that. It's an emotional experience. So I do hope that if they let these people watch it in a closed room, that we're just gonna, I guess, have to stay off the internet knowing that there's gonna be at least one jerk in that room that wants to brag that they know what happened before it goes live on Disney Plus. Or if it goes live on Disney Plus at the same time and second, hopefully that's not going to be when New Zealanders are at work or in the middle of the night. It's going to be a little bit mean either way.
We can't be too grumpy. I mean, if it's in the middle of the night, that's fine. We'll get up, because, frankly, a lot of Americans have had to do that, so we can't be too grumpy. We've been very lucky in many ways that it's just midnight in America happens to fall at quite a convenient time for New Zealand. So, if we're getting up at 3 a.m. or something else, I haven't even done the math on the time conversions. But anyway, so that Obi-Wan Kenobi date has been shifted to May the 27th, and it did give us a lot to talk about in relation to Star Wars Celebration, which is taking place between May the 26th and May the 29th, so just a little over a month, about less than 6 weeks. And that's a good segue to talk about the rest of Star Wars Celebration. Now, even if you're not going, it is a time to be very aware of what's going on the internet, because there will be a lot of announcements related to Star Wars upcoming events and series, and potentially products as well. Of note, the opening panel for Star Wars Celebration, which will be taking place, I guess on May the 26th, is celebrating all of the upcoming live-action series on Disney+. So they will be, the opening presentation at Star Wars Celebration will be featuring the series The Mandalorian, Andor, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I imagine they'll be having some actual guests and or directors or so forth from each of those series. So there'll be some interesting material coming out from that. I'll just read the official blurb from StarWars.com related to that. Star Wars Celebration returns in May, launching with a must-see showcase that will kick the weekend's festivities into hyperdrive. On Thursday, May the 26th, Lucasfilm's current crop of live-action filmmakers we'll be joined by special guests to discuss the many Star Wars adventures coming soon, including Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor, and The Mandalorian. On that note, there is a rumour on the street on the internet that we will be getting a highly anticipated Andor trailer at Celebration. That makes a lot of sense. I would actually be surprised if it didn't pan out that way, and I'm very much excited to that. It's still 6 weeks away, like I say, but I think I don't mind counting down. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I love all the other series that have come so far along the way, but I'm quite looking forward to Andor. It's going to have quite a different feel to some of the material we've seen.
I think a lot of fans agree that Rogue One was a really good film, and I think it was almost a no-brainer to kind of do a shoot-off of some component. Really glad that Andor was the character that they kind of picked from that. I know he was certainly well-liked within the sort of Star Wars fan community that I tend to participate in. So I'm very much looking forward to getting any kind of information. Like you say, I'm fingers really, really crossed that they give us a trailer at this one. It's the next one in the line. It would be the sort of amp up, knowing that Kenobi is sort of screening at Celebration. It would be silly for them to give us a trailer when we're about to see what could possibly amount to nearly 2 hours worth of footage within hours of this panel. Yeah. So yeah, Andor trailer makes the most sense for them to give us at this point.
I'd actually be surprised if they don't show an Andor trailer. Hey, but the other thing that's interesting about the official blurb is it says, discussing the many Star Wars adventures coming soon, including Obi-Wan, Andor, and The Mandalorian. We know that there's another live-action series in the works and potentially others that haven't even started pre-production. It will be interesting to hear if we get confirmation that the filming that has just started in terms of casting will be a High Republic series and whatever else we might be seeing down the line. I think there'll be some big, big news that will come out of this.
Yes, well, rumours include the likes of the Ahsoka series beginning filming soonish.
Yep, that's due April, I believe.
So, yeah, they could give us a shot,
sort of tease,
a picture from set, things like that. Like, it wouldn't be a huge spoiler to show a picture of, like, Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka in full costume on set. We already know what she looks like. Sets can be really sort of vague. Just like, ooh, a locale. It doesn't tell us anything about the storyline or anything like that. So I am hoping that, yes, that they don't necessarily put it in the title because then people get too excited and they go into it with a big expectation. If you just give them the obvious ones and then slip in something else, then it sort of blows minds.
Yeah, because things like this panel, 90% of it will be based on those titles we just discussed, and the other 10% will be things that are a little more fresh or we may not have heard about yet. So just to summarise a couple of interesting things. So Obi-Wan Kenobi is obviously the next live-action series that we're expected. We're probably going to get Bad Batch after that. It seems to have been bumped from the initially revealed release date, probably by a couple of months. But it's probably going to come after Obi-Wan Kenobi at this point. And then we'll get Andor and then Mandalorian Season 3 later in the year. So on that note, in addition to that live action panel that's opening Star Wars Celebration, there is a separate Mando panel that has been announced. So they're calling it Mando Plus as a play on the Disney Plus home for The Mandalorian. And it's specifically going to be a conversation with Favreau and Filoni, and they'll be telling us a little bit about potentially what to expect in Season 3 and or the other related series related to Mando, and potentially where it's going to go down the line after that, whether or not it might be, whether or not we can expect to see further Mandalorian seasons, which we presume and hope for.
Yeah, certainly with the popularity and success of the first season, it felt like Disney Plus and Lucasfilm had sort of a wide range of ideas for spin-offs. And I feel like that perspective has changed a little bit. So I feel like a Mando panel will obviously focus more on the Mandalorian main series. But I would be curious to see if they're going to touch on any of the spin-offs. Obviously the Rangers one is not really going ahead much anymore. They never really gave us that much of an official word about it. We don't know if anything's kind of swung in there.
That never got off the ground. It was just sort of allocated into other series.
Obviously, with Dave Filoni, he might be able to tell us about some of the storylines that will thread off Mandalorian to give us the Ahsoka series, because obviously that is what they're using as the branching off point, because it is Rosario Dawson's.
Yeah, well, this is described as a panel. I'll be interested to know if they're going to be brave enough to field questions from the audience, because it may carry the conversation in directions they weren't necessarily anticipating.
Yeah, because I know people will be very keen for any sort of tidbits. Obviously, the initial episode with Ahsoka gave us all sorts of possibilities for where things can go, the mention of Thrawn, and I know that the internet is rife with all sorts of speculation about whether the characters of Rebels might show up in an Ahsoka series. Rumors about whether Ezra could show up or Sabine, some of the younger characters from that show that knew Ahsoka, whether they will help her, because they were obviously involved in the sort of clash with Thrawn. I think that would be really fun. I don't know if they would necessarily go into any of that, whether any panel at Celebration will give us any additional information about some of the upcoming series or possible plot lines or anything like that. Certainly if they were going to go and reveal a live action actor at Celebration, like they have sometimes for some of the sequel films, they would bring actors on stage and go, oh yes, this is this person who's playing this character, and we're like, oh, that's cool, we don't know who that character is. But with some of these shows, we do know who characters are, so it'll be interesting to see if they bring out a live action actor and announce that they are playing this character that we didn't, that we know the character but didn't necessarily know that they would be appearing in a live action capacity.
Yeah, I think that's more likely to happen at the opening panel, because this one here seems to be just focusing on Favreau and Filoni. There's also going to be a Bad Batch panel, which I find quite interesting. It's described thus: join host David Collins as he invites Star Wars The Bad Batch executive producer and supervising director Brad Rao, executive producer and head writer Jen Corbett, story editor Matt McNevitz, and actors D. Bradley Baker and Michelle Ang, the Kiwi, of course, who played Omega, to discuss highlights from the first season of the acclaimed series, as well as some exciting hints of what's to come in Season 2. Language there is kind of important. Exciting hints of what's to come in Season 2. That does strongly tell us that we can't expect to see the Bad Batch until after Celebration, which concludes on May the 26th. So not until June, July for Bad Batch.
It would be fun if they gave us a trailer. I know they don't necessarily hype up the trailers for animated series to the same extent as live action, but exciting hints, that kind of feels like, oh, here's a trailer. Especially if, we don't know if the series was bumped because they wanted to work on it more, or bumped just simply because of timing. And this thing is done and sitting on a shelf waiting for release. I'm inclined to think it's done and waiting for release, and it was simply Disney Plus going, you know what, we don't want to overlap these things, let's just shelve it until this date. So I guess that gives an opportunity to kind of really hype it up at Celebration, and a trailer wouldn't be too spoilery to show, considering that we wouldn't really have too much longer to wait by that point. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Okay, let's talk about conventions taking place a little closer to home. The Armageddon Expo, the next one, is going to take place in Auckland in June 10th to the 12th. And the reason we're bringing this up now is because of the current the recent COVID restrictions. It was an uncertain date. It was presumed that things would be safe by then, but it was not confirmed. Having said that, though, the country has moved into the orange restriction zone as of middle of this past week, which means that Armageddon Expo in Auckland in June is confirmed to go ahead. This is because the orange restriction means controlled access, i.e. ticketed or registration events can go ahead with no capacity limits or distancing requirements at venues. So on that note, tickets for the upcoming Armageddon Expo in June will be on sale from 9 a.m. Tuesday the 10th of May from iticket.co.nz. Very much looking forward to that. The 100th installment of the Armageddon Expo series, basically.
Yeah, this is exciting. Obviously, Star Wars has always had a bit of a presence at Armageddon, some years more than others, with guests and things like that. But it is always a fun sort of outlet for fans to get together, do a bit of shopping. There's a lot of costuming every year. So this is exciting. At this point, no Star Wars guests, either virtually or in person.
A bit more focus on animation guests for this first one. And there are, of course, opportunities for Star Wars guests. And we'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep an eye on the announcements, see if they have any Star Wars ties, but there's none that we've been aware of to this point. Hopefully down the line, because I'll tell you what, we just mentioned that Michelle Ang will be making an appearance at Celebration, so she's obviously doing conventions around the globe. I think Tamara Morrison made an appearance at Supernova in Australia in the last few days. as well, so he's obviously not averse to attending conventions as a follow-on to his appearance in the Book of Boba Fett.
I
So
think
maybe we'll get those at Auckland.
It would be very silly for the Armageddon organisers to not pursue Temuera for an in-person appearance at an Armageddon convention in New Zealand, especially since now that his live action series is out there, he's got to know that getting Boba Fett himself would be a pretty big draw card, a pretty big sort of exciting thing, and a lot cheaper on the sort of travel costs, because Temuera is based in New Zealand. It wouldn't be a big deal to sort of, get him up for a weekend or two to one or more events in New Zealand. I think that would be really exciting for New Zealand fans, particularly the younger generation that may not have had the opportunity to meet Temuera at one of the earlier Armageddons. It's been a while since he was there as a sort of a signing guest. I think it would be very cool for a panel and definitely give an Armageddon convention a real Star Wars flavor for the local fans, especially for those of us that won't be able to travel internationally to go to conventions to meet these guys in Australia or in the States or internationally.
Alright, in video game news, LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga was released on all major platforms about a week ago, in the past week, and apparently just as one measure of its degree of success on Steam, it has crushed the all-time concurrent player record for the LEGO franchise by a factor of 10 times.
Yeah, this one was sort of a hotly anticipated game. It was delayed a few times, but it seems to have been well worth the wait. I'm getting all sorts of reports that it's just kind of like universally loved. If you love the LEGO games before, you will just love this one. It's the sort of game that the whole family can enjoy. The kids will love it because the gameplay is not complicated. It's not a violent game. The bricks disintegrate and you can sort of reassemble. It's not violent, but anybody that has just an ounce of nostalgia for any of the other LEGO games will really, really enjoy this one. The details are great. The gameplay, the sheer number of characters. There's all sorts of ones you can unlock in the game. There's all sorts of unlock codes floating around the internet so you can add more characters to your roster. It's definitely one that's popular and definitely popular in our house. It's definitely worth checking out. I wish that there were more Star Wars games that are coming out on a regular basis, considering the sort of the legacy of Star Wars and the huge sort of back catalogue of amazing sort of landmark Star Wars games. I wish there was sort of a more frequent cadence to the release of Star Wars video games.
Interesting that you say that, because there is a lot more re-release and porting of older games which is taking place, and I think that's a worthwhile thing to at least fill the gap.
Yeah, but I feel like there is so much scope for new stories, new games, and at least we've got something like this. It's going to take a while to go through and get that sort of 100% complete unlock. You found all the secret bricks, you've done all the sort of side quests and things like that. That's always quite a mark of achievement for any of the LEGO games, finding all the secret bricks and achieving the true Jedi for each level, unlocking all the characters and stuff like that. This is going to have hours and hours of gameplay in it, and it's available on a number of platforms, so you can sort of play it on the platform of your choice.
Yeah, so we have got our hands on it personally, and we'll be having a bit more of a chat about some of the details about this next week, and might even get some gameplay streamed or uploaded to our Villa Veracchino Twitch stream or YouTube channel within about a week.
Yep, great fun all round.
All right, moving from news headlines to the smaller news bites. If you're a adult fan with children who are Star Wars fans, you might like to check out some of the latest installments on the Star Wars Kids YouTube channel. They've started a new series that they're calling Galactic Pals. This is the same style as the recent Galaxy of Creatures series on the Star Wars Kids YouTube channel. The 2 episodes have been released as well as a trailer so far. So this is an animated series that some people have described as looking a bit like if Muppet Babies met Star Wars, so Star Wars Babies. And for the kids, definitely they're only a couple of minutes long, but if you're, like I say, got younger kids in the family that you want to sort of get engaged in or introduced to Star Wars, this is a great way to do it.
Yeah, they're short, just over a minute long. They're very accessible, available in the YouTube Kids sort of app. So if you've got younger children that only access YouTube through the kids version, that's there and free to watch.
Yep. So moving into the sort of rumour speculation department, we know there's a lot of fans of the Star Wars Visions animated series that was on Disney+, and a lot of desire for a season 2. Could that be happening? We've heard via CineLinks. Jordan Mason has reported on cinelinks.com that he's heard from multiple sources that season 2 of Visions is in the works. In fact, it has been at some level in the works for some time now. But beyond that, there's actually a rumour that it may be hitting Disney Plus this year, so less than a year out. Time hasn't been pinned down, but could be as early as September or October. They didn't make a big deal about the timing, and they didn't necessarily try to fit this in amongst other series in quite the same way as they did for the major animated series Bad Batch or the live action series when this was released last time. It's sort of its own thing. It's not as strong a playing card as the others, so it's quite, I feel it's quite believable that we might just sort of see it inserted in a random date and a random month later this year.
It's also a lot easier for them to make this under a time crunch because
it's all different studios.
So they're essentially making like one episode. It takes them a long time to make the Bad Batch, but if all different studios made one episode each, then it only takes as much time as it makes to do one episode. So, with the likes of, like, we're all aware of how much The Simpsons gets churned out every year. If you think that it takes them, like a month or two to make a full episode of The Simpsons, then that's all it would take to do a whole season of Visions. With all the different studios working on their one episode.
So I like many episodes of that first season of Vision. Some great characters, some great visual styles, and I think it would be very cool if we see more of this down the line. I think it just sort of fits in and gives us a nice, bit of variety, stuff that we don't necessarily need to stress our brains about in terms of keeping up to date with all of the lore and continuity and so forth. We can just go in and take these piece by piece.
It's interesting that we're getting rumors about season 2 and things like that as we're literally seeing some of the Star Wars Visions Funko Pop vinyl figures actually hitting New Zealand stores. Obviously, it took them a while to kind of really see the success and trust it enough to jump into making merchandise.
To represent,
But it'll be interesting to see if and when we get a season 2, whether they'll be a little bit quicker off the gate about the merchandise, or whether they'll still just be kind of like, okay, which ones did the best, which ones were the most popular. It'll be interesting to see if we get a bit more of a refined focus in a season 2. They've obviously figured out, with the likes of Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, the different internet outlets.
Disney stats proper.
Yeah, and the Disney stats, seeing which ones were watched the most, which ones ranked the highest in terms of fans and critics, and kind of whether that will tweak the direction that they will go in for a season 2, more of those stories, please, or whether they will still just kind of be wide open and cast the net wide and give the studios the full reign that they did in the first season. Be interesting to see. I'm very much keen to seeing more of it.
Well, the other thing that will be interesting to see, as we frequently say when we're talking about Star Wars, is whether or not there will be any continuity with the existing episodes, or if they'll just be standalone ones.
Yeah, there were a couple where I was really intrigued with the sort of the world building that they did in such a short amount of time. It'll be interesting to see, like you say, if there will be like sort of like a part 2 of any of those ones. Yeah. I would love to see more of some of those stories.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about product announcements and store reports that have been shown up around the country locally. A Hasbro Fan First livestream took place about a week ago. We saw some interesting reveals related to the Black Series, the Vintage Collection. In the Black Series 6-inch lineup, we have a deluxe Saw Gerrera from Rogue One figure, another Republic Commando Gaming Greats figure, Sev RC1207. He's a Bad Batch repaint, but the fact that they're releasing all of these figures, as we said last podcast, I think, is probably making them more desirable than if they'd just done standalone. In the comic box series, where we've previously seen characters like Darth Maul released, we're getting a Infinity's Darth Vader. So this is a white version from an earlier comic a few years back now. Sergeant Creel, who is a stormtrooper that wields a lightsaber, and a Princess Leia. These are quite cool figures. I particularly like that Princess Leia comic art translated into a figure. That Fan First livestream event also revealed that in the pipeline there is another 6-inch scale Grogu coming out down the line, and a Season 1 Migs Mayfeld figure. Some of these are actually shown up for pre-order already, which is quite cool. The Saw Gerrera, it's a deluxe figure, $69 at Mighty Ape or $79 at EB Games. They are not selling out yet, so I don't know why you'd go for the higher price point, but like I say, they're available from multiple retailers. The comic box layer also $62 at Mighty Ape, $79 at EB Games. The Infinity's Darth Vader figure, same pricing, $62 at Mighty Ape, $79 at EB Games. The Sev Republic Commando figure, because it's a Gaming Greats series, it's exclusive to EB Games, and that's $59 from them.
Yeah, and I know some people are sort of a little bit miffed about the sort of collectible comic packaging or the collectible variants where it's just a subtle difference, or the metallics and things like that. I'm always a little bit torn. I love the Princess Leia packaging on these ones, but then again, the packaging means that you don't really want to take them out because it kind of, but then if you like to display your figures loose on the shelves, then you end up with a conundrum. Do you buy it and have it kept in its box? Do you open it and kind of ruin the packaging a bit? Or do you end up buying both? And when these are at a higher price point, pretty much double a standard Black Series figure at local prices, just for the sake that it's got a printed box that looks a little bit different, is a little bit cheeky. We're seeing this with a couple of different vendors.
They're very cool figures, but I think the packaging, at first glance, it looks cool, but you can't see the figure with the box closed.
Yeah.
You have to open it up, and when it's open, you can't see the box cover. So I kind of love it, but don't love it.
Yeah. It'll just look like a cardboard box on your shelf to kind of get it out. And it's cardboard. You can only open and close these things so many times and handle it before you start to kind of give it a bit of wear and tear. So yeah, it's a bit tricky. And again, it's one of these variations. And I know that part of the initial appeal about the Black Series, even though they've changed the format a few times, is that they look really good, all lined up, boxed on your shelf. But the more variants they do, the more they kind of ruin that. There isn't a standard version of this comic layer. I think that would help and soften the blow a bit, as if they did, okay, here it is in the standard packaging. So if you want to open it, that's fine. If you want to put it next to all your other Black Series and make it look all nice on your shelf, that's cool too. And here it is in like a collectible, limited edition, one-time only comic variation.
It's a
so you can pick and choose
idea.
Which one you'd like.
Almost certainly not going to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But, I think the figure's really, really cool. I think I'll probably buy that one as an opener. Interestingly, that 2 out of 3 of the comic boxed series figures are shown up locally online. I don't know if we'll see the Sergeant Creel. We've had some odd instances locally where we've got 90% of a wave showing up, but one cool character, usually the coolest one, not showing up from the wave. And this is another instance. And that actually applies to the vintage collection ones, which I'm just going to discuss. We get most of those have already shown up locally for pre-order, but not the entire range that have been announced. So also from the Hasbro Fan First Livestream vintage collection announcements include ARC Trooper Jesse from the Clone Wars. This is a clone trooper with the blue deco and the Republic symbol on his helmet and a facial tattoo. Mandalorian Death Watch Airborne Trooper, also from the Clone Wars. This is the trooper that has the red Maul inspired paint job and horns on his Mandalorian helmet. Lando Calrissian, the Donald Glover versions, described as coming from Star Wars Battlefront 2, but it is in fact also from the closing scenes of Solo, A Star Wars Story, where he's wearing his sort of predominantly white shirt and a cape, sort of blue lining, as distinct from the yellow shirt and black cape that he wears for most of the season. I actually really like this figure. I actually like all of the Solo figures in particular, so I'm really quite keen to buff that collection out with another character. I just find it a little bit unusual that they've decided to refer to this Lando Calrissian figure as coming from Battlefront rather than Solo. Shae Vizsla from Star Wars The Old Republic, a updated figure with a new head sculpt, which looks really, really good. The head sculpt looks so much more like the in-game model, the current version, rather than the sort of older trailer version of Shae Vizsla. And we'll definitely be buying at least one of those. Imperial Death Trooper is the troop builder set. We didn't see these locally. You have to source them from overseas. We've previously seen Stormtroopers and Republic soldiers from the tentative blockade runner scenes. And the Chewbacca Prototype Edition, this is the series where they have random assortments of coloured components on the figure to represent the sort of prototype vintage figures that are out there. We didn't see those locally either, but I know a few people did hunt them down. In the pipeline from the Vintage Collection series, all of the figures seem to be coming from the Mandalorian. We've got a Klatooinian Raider, an Artillery Stormtrooper, Season 2 Luke Skywalker, and a Dark Trooper. And separate from all of that, just before that live stream, there was also announced to be a Figrin Dan figure coming out on a Vintage Collection card. Like I say, a number of these are available for pre-order We've seen them up at Mighty 8 for $39 a piece, which is quite expensive for a 3.75-inch vintage collection figure. So hopefully these may show up elsewhere, but if you're really, really keen on locking some of these down, some of them I think will move quite fast. Potentially that Shay Vizsla figure, they are available for pre-order right now.
I'm very excited to see Shay Vizsla included in this assortment. The Star Wars The Old Republic is a popular game in this household, and the figures always do well. They never sort of peg warmers. I wish that they did more figures.
But they're very cool design characters on the whole.
Yeah, there are tons of characters within the game that I think would do very well amongst collectors. There are some really cool sort of newer additions to the game characters that I think would be very, very popular. Lana Beniko, I think, would be a fantastic addition to an action figure lineup. I hope that the popularity and Hasbro revisiting some figures that they have done for Star Wars The Old Republic prompts them perhaps to continue and make some new ones. But I'm very excited by this sort of range. A lot of the times Hasbro seems to sort of really hone in on certain ones or just repaints them over and over. So I'm excited to see ones like the Lando, a clone trooper, ones from the Clone Wars, and of course lots of ones from the Mandalorian. They were a little bit slow off the gate with Mandalorian 4-inch figures. So I'm glad to see that they're sort of finally catching up and getting going, giving us a good amount because, hey, a lot of people now have a 4-inch scale Razor Crest, and it would be nice to put some figures around it, you know. So I'm sure that these will do very well for collectors that have a Razor Crest and want to build out a bit of a scene or just a themed collection to really make an impressive display.
The other non-figure announcement from that Hasbro Fan First live stream is a Trapper Wolf Black Series electronic X-Wing pilot helmet. So Trapper Wolf is of course Dave Filoni's character as he appeared in The Mandalorian. This is quite a cool paint job, and I think it will look quite good next to other X-Wing pilot helmets on your shelf. They are all just the same mold, so it's a bit of a repaint. Now, as we've seen recently, EB Games sometimes gets their hands on exclusive or gets their hands on items exclusively from Hasbro that other retailers can't, and that may be the case for this helmet because they're the only ones listing it currently. So EB Games has this helmet priced at $299, which is a shade higher than some of the other Black Series helmets, which is a bit of a shame. I'd expect to pay $230 to $240 for this helmet, but yeah, that's how things are going to pan out in this instance, perhaps.
Especially considering that this one is essentially a repaint. They've done a couple of X-Wing pilot helmets now. And like, while I would expect the likes of Din Djarin's helmet or Bo-Katan's helmet to be a little bit higher priced because they are unique shapes that cannot be reissued with different variations. When it comes to an X-Wing helmet, it's been done for decades, and kind of sneaking the price up there is a little bit cheeky, especially since this one will not be quite as sought after as a classic Luke Skywalker X-Wing helmet. That one I could see you could add an extra $40-$50 because it's Luke's helmet, and even a casual Star Wars fan will love the idea of just having a classic Stormtrooper, classic X-Wing because they're iconic. This one is a little bit down the line. It's not even original trilogy. It's, you know, a relatively new character with a paint scheme that isn't as well recognized. So
I have to be honest,
this one could end up being on a little bit of a clearance item.
Not because it's a dud helmet or anything, but it's just supply and demand. I think occasionally, or even more than occasionally, sometimes when EB Games thinks they've got a winner and they lock something down as being exclusive in terms of how they source it from Hasbro, it doesn't always work out in their favour. They do end up with quite a few of these on their shelves.
Yeah, their previous one, which was the Death Watch Mandalorian sort of variation on the standard Mandalorian helmet, is still sitting around in most EB Games stores. You generally walk in and there's a pile of about 2 or 3 of them in just about every store. I think they thought that, oh yeah, Mandalorian helmets, people love those, without really fully understanding that it's not like a named character. It's a cool looking helmet, but it's not going to float everyone's boat. You have to be quite a helmet focused collector or a completionist or a specific collector of Mandalorian helmets to want that one in your collection.
Well, if you're going to commit to that sort of thing, you've got to understand the segmentation of the market and the distinction between the hardcore vocal fans that will, you know, have a lot of cash in their pocket and a budget specifically for Star Wars collectibles, and that number isn't quite as big as some people sometimes think in terms compared to the sort of mass market for Star Wars collectibles that are just buying, you know, action figures for their kids or whatever.
Especially when we see just how many Nerf Amban rifles are still sitting in EB Games stores as well. EB Games is always a little bit of a complicated one. I appreciate the fact that they get in big range collectibles, some of the pieces that are expensive or fussy to source from overseas, but then they go and put them in display cases. You don't know who has taken them out of their box, how well that they have looked after them, especially when you're selling hot toys and collectibles that are in that sort of $500 to $1,000 price range. I know personally I don't trust other people to touch my collectibles unless they really know what they're doing, and the average 20, 30-year-old that's employed to work retail won't necessarily appreciate the way that you really should handle these figures, especially if you're trying to convince serious collectors to part with their money rather than getting a completely sealed one straight from the manufacturer. So yeah, it's interesting to see if EB Games is going to lean more into trying to do exclusives and higher end items. Certainly they're trying to push the price point higher for some of these items. I don't know if they think maybe it will make them seem more appealing by putting a higher price tag on it. But yeah, I'm kind of crossing my fingers that this one will show up from a few other retailers.
We're seeing quite an array of other products showing up around New Zealand as well. We don't often see these pre-announced, but randomly from Adidas, a new line of 2022 Star Wars sneakers, mostly sort of themed around Boba Fett, interestingly. This line includes character representations such as Bosk, Boba Fett of course, a vintage prototype version of Boba Fett, so based on the action figure, Sarlacc, Jabba's throne room slides. So we've reported on all of these on SWNZ. Follow the link we'll leave down below. Most of them are available via adidas.co.nz at the time of writing. There's some interesting... Most of the Adidas products of late have been recolors of existing lines on the whole, and some of them are quite subtle in terms of the character representation, but if you're a sneaker fan and you want a bit of Star Wars on your feet, then check these ones out.
Yeah, I appreciate that Adidas is continuing with the Star Wars line. I just wish they would release a few that remind me of their very first initial offering, where the shoes were themed.
Great,
yeah, where they were really strongly themed, with not just the colors, but the sort of shapes and designs of the shoes. They did some really neat things. And the new ones, you've really got to look close to see what Star Wars about them. Even the text on the side is generally just like something like Ultra Boost. It's just the design of the sneaker, nothing to do with Star Wars. They don't even sort of put Ultra Boost in like Aurebesh or something like that down the side, and most of the times it's kind of hidden on the inside of the shoe.
They're subtle in their recolors, which is a bit of a shame, but I do actually like those Bosk ones. I like the colour, but most of them are just repaints of the NMDR ones, or the Boba Fett vintage prototype Boba Fett is the existing Stan Smith tennis shoes with just a slightly different colour and some graphics applied to it.
Yeah, I think the Sarlacc is my favorite from this range. I think it's fun. It's got sort of printed tentacles on the back of the shoe, which might be a bit weird, for people looking at your shoes. Yeah. Star Wars fans will get it. I think the color really sort of ties it together. I think it's kind of fun.
The only thing I should mention here, the incident that's not in Adidas's favor, is that last time they released Boba Fett shoes was at a point in time where they were apparently shifting warehouses, and they let a lot of people pre-order Boba Fett shoes to the point where they were sold out. Didn't order as many into the country as many as were pre-ordered because their excuse was they were changing warehouses and they didn't have the storage space for it, and they cancelled people's orders, and people that could have got these from other places overseas or whatever. Disappointed a lot of fans, Star Wars fans, shoe fans, sneaker fans, Adidas fans.
Yeah, I think that was a really bad move. Obviously, I think local fans will still be a bit burnt by that. If you have ever collected sneakers, if you're in that space, you know that by the time these things are sold out internationally, you can be paying easily double very quickly, especially for a character as popular as Boba Fett, if you've got to source these things on the secondary market. So by the time everyone knew that they're apparently paid for locked-in orders from Adidas New Zealand weren't actually for anything, got their money back, you're now having to hunt them down on the secondary market because they had sold out everywhere. And I think that burnt a lot of people. And that seems really stupid on Adidas's part, knowing the culture around these sneaker collectors. People don't need yet another pair of white or black sneakers, but the collabs, those are always hotly contested. And I think it's a shame that this sort of thing is for the Star Wars communities. If it was, say like a Supreme collab or something like that, this would make news headlines, if they had gone and muffed up something to that extreme. So I hope that they paid attention to the lesson that they learned there and try and do better for the local fans.
Yeah, it was probably a one-off. Like I say, it left a bit of a sour taste in the mouths of some local purchasers. Star Wars Funko Pops, we almost always talk about new releases of these in SWNZ podcasts because they tend to come in pretty thick and fast. There's just one we want to mention this week. In a Make-A-Wish charity series with characters from a number of different franchises, there is a Star Wars installment, a BB-8 that's sort of presented in a bit of a blue chrome finish. This is supporting the Make-A-Wish charity and it's described as being in honour and celebration of World Wish Day 2022, which takes place on April the 29th, and is part of Funko Pops With a Purpose program, that they call it the WP With a Purpose program. Funko will donate $150,000 regardless of the number of sales to Make-A-Wish, an organisation that creates life-changing wishes for children with critical illness. So the Funko Pops With a Purpose program was introduced last year, 2021. This is just the second sort of wave of figures, but it's quite cool seeing these sort of charity-related products coming out, even if they are just sort of repaints of existing models. So BB-8 will be coming from Funko in that lineup. It is available at local retailers of Funko Pops, including Mighty 8. I think standard sort of pricing off the top of my head. And yeah, you can get that in. It will be released on April the 29th. We talked about all the upcoming Vintage Collection figures, but on the shelves right now, the Vintage Collection Deluxe set featuring the Mandalorian and Grogu from the Meldo Christ episode of The Mandalorian. So this is the set that includes the ice spiders, a big one and a couple of baby spiders running around. It's available at the warehouse, online via the warehouse website or via the market, priced at $45, which is quite fair. A couple of other smaller retailers had this set a little while back, such as Toyco, but it's interesting to see that this Vintage Collection set now showing up at the warehouse as well. From New Zealand Mint, their chibi coin for this month is interesting. It is Yoda, so it'd be quite interesting to see him standing alongside the Grogu chibi coin. But two versions of this, $148 for a 1 ounce silver coin in the chibi series, standard boxing, standard numbering, or deluxe boxing and first 100 numbering for about 300 New Zealand dollars. They're available via nzmint.com right now. The next installment of the Faces of the Empire series, an Imperial Patrol Trooper from Solo: A Star Wars Story, is also up for order. This is another 1 ounce coin continuing that series. And they've announced in their coming up page, but not out yet, a Battle Scenes Hoth 3 ounce silver coin. Be interesting to see what that actually looks like. And another miniature pure silver figure, Darth Vader, priced at a little over $1,000 if they follow on the pattern of the previous silver miniature, which was a sculpture of Boba Fett. They haven't done many of these, but despite the price point, they tend to disappear pretty fast.
Yeah, NZ Mint is coming through pretty thick and fast with their Star Wars coins and collectibles these days, and I guess the market must be there because these mintages are generally in the order of 10 or 15,000 a piece, and that's quite a lot of coins. So I guess it's a really growing market. They are really neat to see. We have a few ourselves, so it's fun to see that they're making these. It feels like a couple a month.
Well, they do. They're releasing a Faces of the Empire 1 per month. They're releasing a chibi coin 1 per month, and then they're throwing other standard coins into the mix as well. So yeah, it's 3, 4, sometimes as many as 5 products per month from NZ Mint.
I'm curious that they went with Chibi Yoda this month after Queen Amidala previously. I would have thought that they would have done like a Darth Maul or an Obi-Wan, something from the prequels to kind of tie in with Amidala. She sort of feels a little bit left field. Not that I'm complaining. I think she was a fabulous addition to the line. I'm very keen to see because it felt like there was a little bit of a predictability. They did Rey and Kylo. They did sort of Mandalorian and Grogu.
Amidala's by herself so
far.
And
so she's by herself. So they're kind of jumping all over the place. We didn't even get another prequel one as well. I mean, technically Yoda's in Phantom Menace, I don't know. But his depiction here looks very much Empire Strikes Back.
The design's pretty ambiguous.
Yeah.
But like I say, I think your prediction / hope that we see a more is likely. I would not be surprised if we see that down the line.
Seems like they're really trying to keep collectors on their toes because the chibi coins in particular are quite popular. They release basically silhouettes just prior to sort of hype up because they do let collectors basically pre-order these sight unseen from the 4 ranges. So they do, usually it's like Harry Potter and Star Wars and a couple of other licenses, and you can basically buy one from each of them for the month, sight unseen, because they are that popular. People don't even care which ones they are. They just want the security of being able to pre-order and lock it in rather than sort of button mashing on the release day. So it's fun to see the line is thriving and doing well. It's kind of fun to see a New Zealand company really sort of succeeding well in the Star Wars collectible space.
Right, and just to round this segment out, the 5th wave of Star Wars The Essential Legends Collection novels has been revealed. So these are reprints of older expanded universe content, usually with, always with new covers, which is quite a cool way to do it. And they're working their way through a number of the old expanded universe series. So we are going to see soon up for pre-order X-Wing The Back to War, which is the 4th installment in the X-Wing novel series. We'll also be seeing from the Old Republic lineup the Deceived novel, which features Darth Malgus and is based predominantly on the first trailer from the Star Wars The Old Republic those many years ago, and also in the Old Republic series, the Revan novel, which I think will be quite a popular choice. And as we've said before, we're seeing so much interesting Revan merch creeping into the market, and this is another example of that. Alrighty, that's about it for this installment. I guess we're done doing talking. If you have any thoughts on topics we discussed today, we're definitely keen to hear them. Leave a comment on the YouTube page or our website page for this podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you taking your time to listen to us share our passion for Star Wars. Stay tuned to our website, SWNZ.co.nz, for Star Wars news for New Zealanders and another podcast episode next week. Don't forget you can jump on over to either our Facebook group or the SWNZ message boards to discuss all the latest Star Wars news with other Kiwi fans. Kia ora, kia noho haumaru, thank you for listening and stay safe.
Turou Hawaiki, may the Force be with you.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, go ahead and like the video, check out the SWNZ Podcast playlist for our other episodes, and subscribe for alerts about new episodes. See you next time.